Welcome to these lectures on European Union lawmaking and democracy. My name's Tammy Harvey and I'm one of the staff who's teaching on this module. Now, before I start, I really want to say that this way of learning and teaching isn't easy or natural for anyone. It's not even easy or natural for me, and I've been learning and teaching EU law for over 25 years. So, let me tell you, I put a slot in my diary to record these lectures 3 times, and each time I managed to come up with some kind of internal excuse. I'm not normally a procrastinator. So normally we would be meeting regularly as a community in a lecture theatre. That would help us to organise our learning. So if you're struggling with any of this, get in touch, don't hesitate. I've got a virtual office hour every week. The other team members do too. You can book via Google Calendar or just send me a Google Calendar invitation or send me an email and we can talk about it. Don't struggle alone with having to learn like this. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the objectives of the lecture. This is a slide with a picture of a map of Europe with some keys on it. This lecture will just begin to introduce you to the ways in which the European Union makes law and the laws that govern the European Union's lawmaking powers. By the end of the lecture and the associated independent learning through the electronic workbook and by reading a textbook and making your own notes, you will be able to only begin of course, to marshal arguments to answer an assessment question covering the European Union's legitimacy, or the balance of power in the European Union, or how democratic principles are represented in the European Union's legal structures, or anything along those lines. To give you an illustration, this could be a question like this one. This is taken from the 2019 January examination. The slide has a screenshot of the question available via the virtual learning environment. So this question is a quotation from a piece by Klaus Offer published in 2013 in the European Law Journal. And in this piece, Klaus Offer is musing on the divide between politics and policy. And he says, on the one hand, there is often populist mass politics, and we'll be talking more about populism later on in these lectures. Populist mass politics has no perceptible implication for policymaking on citizens' core interests and bread and butter issues. So the core interests, things that citizens really care about, are things like access to healthcare, particularly important at this time, or job protection, or income protection when people lose their jobs. These are the things that people really care about when they're thinking about political decision making. On the other hand, there is elitist policymaking that has no roots in, no links to, no legitimation through politics, says Klaus Offer. Political elites are increasingly unable to achieve the outcomes that voters desire. What voters need and want is beyond the capacity of the political system to deliver. Without the latter, without the political system, being able to explain to the former, to voters, what the hindrances are, how they might be removed. It is, says Klaus Offer, as if one has mail-ordered a shirt and is supplied a pair of socks. And the question asks, Klaus Offer is writing about the EU's political capacity, or the lack of political capacity of the EU. But to what extent are the things discussed by Klaus Offer also constrained by the EU's legal competence and its law on the relationships between its institutions, the EU's institutions, and between EU institutions and national institutions? So this lecture will help you to be prepared to answer the second half of that question, and a subsequent lecture will talk about the EU's legal competence. Back to the map and the keys. I expect this question looks really quite daunting to you at this stage. So I want to say, don't be daunted. We want to equip you to be able to answer questions like that by the time the assessment comes around in January. And for this, you are going to need basically three things. You're going to need to know and understand some legal rules and principles and the sources of law, secondly, on which those are based. Sources of law, I mean cases, provisions of the European Union's foundational treaties, I will talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and provisions of European Union legislation. So you're going to need to know some legal rules and the sources of those legal rules. And you're also going to need some kind of analytical or conceptual frameworks within which to understand or analyse that legal and factual material. And the main point of this lecture and of many of our lectures is to give you the analytical frameworks, the conceptual frameworks within which you can slot the detailed factual learning that you will be doing through reading textbooks and engaging with the electronic workbook, the workshops, and so on. The next slide has a picture of a Zoom meeting with a cat present. This cat is one of my 3 desk cats who often joins me at work. I would like to encourage your engagement with these recorded lectures to be active. If we were sitting together, I would be able to see your faces. I could see if you were getting a bit lost. I could ask questions to check your understanding. You could ask me questions. I could gauge your opinions. I could get you to discuss a point with the person next to you. You're sitting probably on your own, and so you're going to have to do those kinds of active learning things for yourself at this time, unfortunately. And I would encourage you to talk about your learning. Talk to the cat. Talk to your housemate, if you're lucky to have one who's interested. Talk to your friends. Talk to your course mates. Talk with the members of your operating team, and talk with us. So these are ways that you can reach us through our virtual office hours, through Google Currents, through social media, through email. I would also like you to begin to work directly with the relevant legal texts. So good lawyers know how to read the primary legal texts and apply them, interpret them and apply them in any legal puzzles or problems that they are advising on. And in this case, the key texts are the Treaty on European Union and the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. Make sure that you have copies of these to hand when you're working on your notes. You can find electronic versions, the official versions, on the Youll site, and the hyperlinks are here in the slide. Or you might want to have a paper version. That's my preference. I like to have them on paper. And I'm going to be showing you what I mean by learning actively using the key texts as we go through these lectures. And at the same time, I'll also be modelling some of how I'd like you to engage with your reading for this module. Before we go on to the next video, please could you find the Treaty on European Union and the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union and get a copy of them up on your laptop or your computer, or a paper copy of them available. And then when you've done that, you'll be ready to go on to the next video.